man's gunning for me tonight. I spent the last week running from the heat, but the beat's coming alive. Let's get lost tonight. Love moves on my right.
Oh my God, Mike. Yeah, you're not kidding. I don't know why the video quality in this studio looks like this. I mean, it doesn't really matter. You know what I look like. It doesn't affect the show, really. But it is just weird. We spent 20 minutes. I mean, I didn't do anything. I sat here because I can't. I'm not allowed to tinker with stuff in the studio. But Mike spent like 20 minutes, and now I look like I'm some kind of an Oompa Loompa or Violet Beauregard after she ate the blueberry gum or the snozberries for that Veruca Salt licked or something. I don't know what's happening here, but I apologize. Just, if you're watching the show, just, go look at my Instagram and then listen to my voice and you know what I'm supposed to look like. There's too many important things to cover, again, and it's only this show apparently that has an issue. But whatever. Okay, welcome to Without a Country. We are live if you're watching on YouTube. Mike, what is the number where they can call in? Please, again, only call in kind of regarding the topics that we're going over. We don't hear you.
The live call-in number is
there you go.
201-308-3510, and please be ready to text with me while I call screen you.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, if you want to talk about something where he's screening, it's not you personally. Everyone gets screened for the show. Okay, a lot to go over. Let's get into the enemy of the state real quick. Today's enemy of the state is hysteria. Okay. If you watched the pre-show, you heard me talk a little bit about this. This is not a new topic, but I do want to reinforce it because I've already seen the hysteria happening online, right? If you follow me on Instagram, you've seen me posting about a good amount of the stuff that Donald Trump has done so far, because I do think it's important that we keep ourselves informed. I would never say distract yourself or don't pay attention or ignore what is happening in the government. I think that's a mistake. But I also think that overreacting is a mistake, right? It's what they want. And that in and of itself creates a distraction. Our own hysteria. We become overwhelmed. We feel like we have lost all control. And then a lot of times when you feel overwhelmed, instead of doing a little something, you get overwhelmed and you do absolutely nothing, okay? And so all of us getting overwhelmed and doing absolutely nothing is worst case scenario. Obviously, an individual person, unless you're Donald Trump, can't overthrow the government on their own, and so or fight against a corrupt government on their own. But we each, as individuals, can do a little bit of something, whatever that is. I know we talk a lot about local politics on this show. I actually got an email that I saw right as I was heading out to the studio, kind of saying like, "Hey, what can we do?" From a wacko. I know that you always encourage getting involved in local politics, but if I live in an area that's already like super liberal, that's kind of not going to help on a local or national level, right? I would say that it still will, right? Because you want to make sure that even if you are in a place where the local government is liberal, that you, number one, keep an eye on that you don't become complacent, okay? You saw or you see what happens. I mean, I think there's a lot of states in the U.S. that had become complacent as blue states, and they very slowly, or depending on how you look at time, swiftly drifted into the red states as the Democratic Party lost the vision of who they are supposed to be, right? I think that's something that everyone really acknowledged after Kamala lost the election, is that the Democratic Party needs serious rebranding. They kind of had started shifting into either some Democrats, I would say, shifted into Republican light or diet Republican, which is not is like, okay, well, why would if you share those points of views, you would just vote Republican because it's the same ideas, but it's someone who's more trustworthy to get it done. I do think in many ways the Republican Party has done a better job of not nitpicking each other. There's a lot of nitpicking on the side of the Democrats, and I know because I am on the left, it's probably easier for me to figure those things out. Oh, look, I look white again, not red or purple. And so I think that's something important is like, who are the Democrats? Back to red. And I don't know what just happened for that moment. And then another thing that happened is some of the Democrats went way too far left and were concentrating on things that only affect a small amount of people, right? Just the same as the Republicans became obsessed with certain LGBTQ issues, specifically in this day and age, trans people. I think part of that was a little bit of a response by how hard some people on the left, especially those people on the left who are very present online, which is not the real world. It's not a reflection of everyday working people. Everyday working people don't have time to spend 5 hours a day arguing on Instagram because they have jobs. And the kind of jobs where you do spend a lot of time on social media, like artists or media, it's not necessarily reflective of, again, middle America, really, just working class people. And the Democratic Party is supposed to be representing working class people. So if it's catering to either Republican light, diet Republican, or a very extreme piece of left-leaning people, people are not going to want to be a part of that party anymore. It was too extreme for them, or not extreme enough, depending on how you look at it. So that's the criticism of the Democratic Party. I'm not saying that I think plenty of people on the right are also hysterical. I think it's been very interesting to see, even after Donald Trump won the election, how hysterical the many Republicans are to any criticisms. It's like, just live your life. Ultimately, you have control of the country right now as Republicans, not just in, the president. So why are you reacting to Democratic criticism with hysteria? That's what I don't understand. Even today, I just saw an article from Fox, kind of like mocking Tim Walz for saying that it's been pure hell since him and Kamala lost the election. It's like, why are we even interested in wasting time on bullying these people who lost? I don't understand wasting the energy when you won. Like, just move on. It's like when your boyfriend gets a new girlfriend and then she's just like and you're not saying anything to them. You've gone on and lived your own life. You're not talking about the breakup. But then like the ex-girlfriend and the boyfriend, your ex-boyfriend, keep trying to pick a fight with you. You're like, you won. You got the guy that you wanted. Why are you even bothering with me anymore? I'm the past. I'm the loser. I don't get it. But that's kind of what's going on right now. So just pick something to stay on top of, I would say. Just the same as I always say, pick something to be passionate about. Pick something to be on, to be on top of. And pick a way, even if it's a small way, to instill progress in your area. You can do volunteer work with nonprofits who share your vision. It doesn't even have to be volunteer work. You can offer to babysit for someone who is experiencing a problem because of deportation threats, or if you know someone who's getting kicked out of the military because they're trans, help them out. I think there's so many ways to help out, and it doesn't all have to be a big way, right? I often suggest big ways to help out, like running for local politics or something like that, because I want to see people, especially on the left and especially women, make bigger moves. I think we need to make bolder moves on the left, and women especially. We don't see that as often. You have to just kiss that imposter syndrome goodbye. And I'm not saying walk into situations that you are completely unqualified to do, or go into situations without any knowledge, but take a bigger risk. If you want to see big changes, you got to take big risks. And if you don't have the time or energy to do that, and I know that's a lot of time and energy, support people by either volunteering your time or donating your money to people who are willing to take those big risks, right? I think that is super important. And again, like I also suggest big things because I have a more malleable lifestyle, right? You know, it's like that's what we talk about when you make a decision. Well, first of all, just like I work for myself, right? So I can do what I want to do and I also don't have to support anyone but me and my dog. So if I decide that I'm comfortable making less money this year and I'll just, live a really meat and potatoes, simple lifestyle this year, tofu and potatoes lifestyle this year, I can absolutely do that, right? If I just cut corners, I'm only cutting corners for myself. And I understand that's I don't even want to call it a luxury. I mean, it's just a choice that I made that I'm like, I'm going to do these things instead of these things. It was just a choice that I made, right? To not have to support a family. And yeah, I'm going to use that time wisely to try and be of service to other people. Last night, I went out with Christina, and New York City is experiencing a really bad homelessness epidemic right now. And on top of the homelessness epidemic, a lot of those people are experiencing a severe mental health crisis, right? And so I'm really interested in that. I love volunteering. I more often volunteer for LGBTQ or animal or women's organizations. But I have done work for New Alternatives, and that was an LGBTQ or is an LGBTQ homelessness nonprofit. So I've done work for that. And I learned recently about Hope NYC. And it's a service of the city from social services where volunteers go out one night, and they specifically pick a night that's in really, really cold weather. And by hand, volunteers get assigned to certain areas in all of the boroughs where you're basically taking a head count of people in New York City who are experiencing specifically unsheltered homelessness. And so we went out and we did that last night. It's from midnight to 4 a.m., specifically times, and you have to interview everyone who you pass on the street, whether they appear visually to be experiencing homelessness or not. And if you come across someone who is homeless, you offer them shelter, and then you call the city and you wait with them. And it takes a couple hours most times, but a ride will come and transport them to a shelter if they want to. They have to agree to it. Everyone has free will. And so we did that last night. And it was really interesting because on paper you're going, it's 2025 and our approach is doing a head count. Like we're doing a head count in real life of people experiencing homelessness. This doesn't sound like a good idea or like an accurate idea, but I read more into it, and it's actually some of the most effective and accurate methodology for assessing the number of people experiencing homelessness. Obviously, they're not being reported on the census. When you don't have an address, you can't respond to the census. So that was really cool, and it's a way to feel like you're doing something positive when other things in the world seem really negative, right? I just think there's always a way to counteract what's happening. And this is a reminder myself as well, but it's something that we can't lose sight of. Like when things seem okay, we shouldn't stop doing this kind of work, And I'm saying that out loud for myself just as much as for you. I know it's hard because you get so tired during the hard times that when it's, easier times, you want to rest, you want to relax, you want to kick back and say so-and-so's taking care of it. But if we always say a little bit active, we won't have to do these huge responses to a tragedy, a travesty, like we are doing now. I want to get into a fact check. I'm sure you've seen this clip of Donald Trump talking about giving $50 million for condoms in Gaza. I'm going to do a report from two places. This is from Fox News from yesterday, January 28th. It says State Department pulls millions in funding for, quote, condoms in Gaza as Trump admin looks to trim spending. Hamas have used condoms as bomb-carrying balloons to terrorize Israel, reports say. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's decision to freeze foreign aid over the weekend included pulling millions of dollars worth of U.S. funding for condoms in Gaza, a White House official told Fox News Digital. The revelation came as the official explained that a separate memo from the Office of Management and Budget will temporarily pause grants, loans, and federal assistance programs pending a review into whether the funding coincides with President Donald Trump's executive orders, such as those related to ending diversity, equity, and inclusion, the Green New Deal, and funding non-governmental organizations that undermine the national interest. If the activity is not in conflict with the president's priorities, it will continue with no issues, the White House official told Fox News Digital. This is similar to how HHS, the Department of Health and Human Services, stopped the flow of grant money to the WHO after President Trump announced the U.S. withdrawal from the organization, or how the State Department halted several $1 million going to condoms in Gaza this past weekend. In her first ever briefing Tuesday, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said that the Department of Government Efficiency and the OMB found that there was about to be $50 million in taxpayer money that went out the door to fund condoms in Gaza. That is a preposterous waste of taxpayer money. So that's what this pause is focused on, being good stewards of tax dollars, Leavitt told reporters. She said DOJ and OMB also found $37 million was about to be sent to the WHO before Trump's executive order breaking ties with the global health body. Fox News Digital reached out to the State Department on Tuesday seeking additional information and was later referred to an X thread by State Department spokesperson Bruce listed several examples of how the pause in foreign assistance has allowed the State Department to prevent unjustified and non-emergency spending, including on condoms. The funding freeze prevented $102 million in unjustified funding to a contractor in Gaza, including money for contraception, the spokesperson said. Our test is simple. Does it make America safer, stronger, and more prosperous? Some aid programs fail this test. Others may have merit, but are not emergency spending and can be reviewed during the 90-day pause, Bruce wrote. Urgent needs are being met. Blanket waivers are in place for emergency food and other emergency humanitarian assistance, and a waiver process exists for items not covered by pre-existing waivers, she added. Bottom line, we will not allow the bureaucracy to exploit a crisis and waste taxpayer dollars. We are protecting American taxpayers, safeguarding America's national security, and ensuring actual life-saving humanitarian aid continues. The Jerusalem Post reported in 2020 that scores of condoms were being used to create IED-carrying balloons that winds would carry into southern Israel, raising alarm on schoolyards, farmlands, and highways. At the time, the Post reported that the improvised explosive devices floated into Israel via inflated contraceptives, burned thousands of hectares of land, and caused millions of shekels of damage. It's not clear if the practice continues. Just 2 days after the October 7th, 2023 attacks, which involved Hamas terrorists brutally raping some of the approximately 1,200 people killed in southern Israel and hundreds of others brought back into Gaza as hostages, a global NGO known as the International Planned Parenthood Federation released a statement regarding the resulting war and escalating violence. The The NGO claimed that any blockade of aid shipments into Gaza would infringe on their enormous gains made in life-saving sexual and reproductive health care in this region. Palestinians are systematically denied sexual and reproductive health care and rights, the executive director of a corresponding NGO, the Palestinian Family Planning and Protection Association, said at the time. Our health system has been repeatedly targeted and depleted by the Israeli occupation, and the more it disintegrates, the more it will hinder the full realization of these rights for women and girls. On Sunday, Rubio paused all U.S. foreign assistance funded by or through the State Department and U.S. Agency for International Development for review. So already, even in the Fox article, right, you're seeing there, Donald Trump is saying it flippantly, like he's, like Hamas is requesting all these condoms so that they can, just fuck willy-nilly. And really, there's a lot more to this information. They're saying, number one, they're using them as war devices. And then second part is it's part of really protection for women and girls. The move came in response to Trump's executive order reevaluating and realigning United States foreign aid, which I think as a concept is not a bad concept, right? I think a lot of Americans agree that we do need to reevaluate how the United States is spending money on its foreign aid. The State Department said Sunday that Rubio was initiating a review of all foreign assistance programs to ensure they are efficient and consistent with U.S. foreign policy under the America First agenda. And we'll get more into that in a second. I believe we do have our guest on the line. Okay. You want me to say is she on the line, Michael? Okay, yeah. Okay, so we can read the counterpoint to that fact check, just so we're clear, because again, we're just seeing Donald Trump everywhere. And he's saying it on purpose because it sounds funny. It sounds super wasteful. It sounds like, oh my God, look at what Joe Biden was doing. He was giving Gaza money for condoms so Hamas could, get their jollies off. And it's just, while like factually, if you were to write that, you're like, okay, this could possibly be true. But again, we're going to get more into it because the Washington Post did a much more in-depth they look into this story that they just published right before I came to the studio. But now we're going to hop off for 1 second, hop off that train, and we are going to get into our interview for today. Thanks to Mike for securing this. Well, he was in Texas, but he was still working, everyone. And so today we have an immigration lawyer, and she is from the firm Lincoln Goldfinch Law. Her name is Jacklyn Garcia, and we are going to talk about all the scary things that are happening with Donald Trump and immigration and deportation, the Laken Riley Act, Colombia, etc. So please welcome Jacklyn to the show. Hi, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. Absolutely. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about the work that you do day to day, how long you've been doing it, maybe what got you into it?
Sure. So my role at Lincoln Goldfinch Law is I'm the lead removal defense attorney. Removal defense just means I'm in court a lot fighting against deportation for my clients, whether it's political asylum or some other sort of application that we filed with the court. I've been doing this for about 5 years. And I got into this, I would say, I first started working with refugees at a refugee resettlement agency in undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
And I just fell in love with it. I felt like it was the best thing that I could be doing. I met people from all over the world every single day and felt like I could do work that made an impact. And so when I graduated from college, I did AmeriCorps, and that's how I ended up here in Austin, Texas. I worked at a shelter for immigrants and asylum seekers in Austin. And then I started to get to know immigration attorneys and all the work that they were doing. And I just figured, I want to do that. That's what I want to be doing with my life. So that's how I ended up going to law school. And then when I finished, I moved back here.
Oh, that sounds incredible, really. Wow, thank you.
Thank you.
So with your work, even in underground with refugees, Can you, I mean, obviously, Donald Trump and his administration have been spreading a lot of rhetoric about who immigrants are, who refugees are, who these asylum seekers are, that they're criminals, that they're people who are draining the economy. Obviously, there's a lot you can read up on that will let you know that's not the case. But what was your experience in undergrad working with refugees? Like, who were these people to you for the most part?
Yeah, for the most part, it was families that just wanted peace. They hoped that their kids would go to school and achieve the American dream and do all these incredible things. But at the end of the day, I think they were just so grateful to not be living in constant terror. And you kind of go back to like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like if you're worried about shelter and getting to school and learning a language and getting a job and getting medical care, you're not thinking about how you can commit crimes and disrupt society and take advantage of this country that's brought you in. So everybody I met was just trying to enjoy their life in peace. There's so much rhetoric, like you said, but even the Trump administration, the first time, their own research that they did through the Justice Department showed that immigrants are less likely to commit crime than their American-born counterparts. They're actually more likely to be victims of crime by American citizens that exploit them, take advantage, their status, know that they won't call the police because they're afraid that if they're a victim and they call the police, ICE will show up and punish them for asking for help. So
absolutely,
the narrative is just totally backwards.
Yeah, and so and obviously, like, yeah, some people who come here will end up committing, like, obviously, some people will commit crimes. It would be crazy to think we're still human beings. What have you seen with your work with immigrants as far as what the U.S. does when an immigrant does commit a crime? Like, I'm talking a serious crime, like a rape or a murder. I don't care if you steal a candy bar from the store. That's such a waste of everybody's time.
Yeah. So obviously there are consequences, and if you weren't born here, you're held to a higher standard. You'll be criminally prosecuted, and then you'll be put in deportation proceedings. And if you have a serious crime like rape or murder or something like that, aggravated robbery, any serious felony, I mean, sometimes you're subject to mandatory detention. So even if you can pay a bond, you're not entitled to one. So you might be in detention for a year or two while your immigration attorney tries to come up with a defense. Maybe it's that you'll be persecuted or tortured if returned to your country of origin or something like that. But it's usually immediate after someone finishes their prison sentence or after the guilty plea. Sometimes before they even get transferred to prison, they'll get transferred to ICE detention. So it's not as if there aren't consequences when these things happen.
Right. And so that's very interesting to hear. So, and this is not something that is specific to the Donald Trump administration, just to reiterate to people watching. This has always, been the case that people who are not born in this country, if they commit crimes, are already held to a higher standard as far as what wiggle room they have. That's correct?
Yeah, that's right. There's almost always, double punishment. If either you finish your prison sentence and then you have to go before an immigration judge and go to ICE detention, private prisons that are run by immigration, or, even before you get transferred from jail to prison, you might get put in detention. And depending on the outcome of that, you might end up back in prison. So people can end up being punished twice, and that's always been the case.
And this, the research done by the Department of Justice that yielded the results that people, American-born citizens are more likely to commit a crime. Are we just finding that information on the White House website, or have they hidden it from us? Like, I would love. It's interesting that they did that, and then they're like, "Well, we're not going to share that with anybody."
Yeah, I mean, I think you could just Google it. The FBI and the Justice Department release crime statistics every year.
Right.
And so they have archives that we can go to. Every presidential administration has little pilot programs and projects that they like to do to try and prove some sort of agenda.
Of course.
And often it doesn't come out with the findings that they were hoping, and then they'll kind of just pull the funding and publish the report because it has to be published, but they won't bring any attention to it. So these things happen, but
so that's very
it's all
interesting. So
public
legally, if they're using money from the administration to do a pilot program, they have to share the results with the public. But of course, they can choose whether or not to put the media on that. That's interesting because it feels like that's something then that the opposing media would kind of be looking for and jumping all over and really wanting to spread that information, I guess, a little bit more than we see that.
Yeah, they usually do. I mean, sometimes it depends on the timing. If something much more interesting is going on,
Of
it'll
course.
sort of take the air out of that. But yeah, all of this is discoverable with Freedom of Information Act or FOIA requests. Some of us who nerd out on these kinds of things save the bookmarks. We check, we follow up, we want to know what's going on. There were similar pilot programs under the Obama administration when I was working at the shelter that I mentioned earlier, tracking success rates of people who were released from immigration detention seeking asylum, and whether they would find housing, an attorney to represent them in their case, whether they would find a job, and whether they needed to be detained, or whether if they had a church or a family member or a shelter that would sponsor them, would they be successful? Would they see their asylum case through? Or were they just using it to get out of detention and then hide and avoid any consequence? And of course, the pilot program was extremely successful. It was like 95+% of the people who were released on these alternatives to detention initiatives were able to get an attorney, get medical care, get a job, get housing. And that proved that we don't need private prisons, especially for immigration detention. And they decided not to change anything about detention and just keep people detained anyway, even though we had the data to show it wasn't necessary.
Right. And do you know, are you familiar? I'm guessing you're familiar with the conditions in these detention centers. Like how bad is it?
Yeah, I mean, they're deplorable. I've visited a lot of detention centers. We've done volunteer work, know your rights presentations, things like that. There are detention centers where, families are held together. That's a lot of the work that I did in law school and after. There are facilities where, people are just sick constantly. There's not clean water coming into those facilities.
Oh my God.
There's not good air conditioning. The conditions are really terrible. Sometimes it's just like a bunch of trailers on a plot of land in the middle of Texas somewhere. And it's not well insulated, and people are just sick all the time. There's no reason for them to have to be there. We have the data to show that they should be released, and they'll follow through. But yeah, it's pretty terrible.
And how frequently
It's not a good
are
place to
people
be.
dying in places like that? Because I know, in the American prison system, they're always trying to hide deaths from insufficient surroundings. So is the same thing, I'm guessing, happening in detention centers?
Yeah, and that's all public information too. Usually the ICE website publishes the number of deaths and other things on their website each year by detention center. So you can actually just go to the ICE website and look at locations, and then it'll give you that data. Depending on who's in office, they may try to hide it or move that tab somewhere where you really have to go looking for it. But yeah, it does happen, just like any other institution or carceral system, right? We have people that get assaulted in jail, that are, they die in jail. Lack of medical care is always an issue. So for sure, it's not a good place to be.
And do you have information on or a reliable number? Because we've seen a lot of estimates of how much undocumented people are adding fiscally to the economy. Do you have a number that you feel like is reliable to share, just to give people an idea of how much they are actually contributing? And especially a lot of it is tax money for services and programs that they would not even have access to.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I wouldn't have a number off the top of my head, but I know that it's not a small number. It's probably in the billions of dollars per year. I mean, it's anything from sales tax to property tax. And like you said, these are folks who don't qualify for Medicaid. They don't qualify for food stamps. They're not getting a lot of the benefits that American citizens do. So they're paying into a system. They can't get a tax refund, for themselves. They might, if they have U.S. citizen children, they might get a tax credit for the kids, but they always have contributed more than they've taken out. That's been consistent regardless of how the economy is doing, where the immigrants are coming from, or who the president is.
So have you found a reliable way to speak to people in your life who just think that immigrants are using the system, that they're getting off, that they're getting a handout? Because that's obviously misinformation. And when you look at the numbers that it's going to cost to detain or deport these individuals, those costs are astronomical. So, for Donald Trump and his administration to say, well, this is going to save us money, like that is not accurate. So there has to be another reason. I'm guessing it's just racism. But you would know better than me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I've ever found a way to convince anyone, but I think if you have someone who's open to looking at the data and talking about, what we just spoke about, I think that's the most telling thing. I also think, I've given other examples, like how much it costs to detain a person every day versus how much they could be working and paying into our Social Security and Medicare, which is,
Right.
Really important, especially right now. There were other things that I think were done under the first Trump administration that were just for shock value, as a lot of the things that he does.
Absolutely.
But we see it a lot in my field, of course. And one of them was family separation in the summer of 2018, separating parents and kids at the border. A lot of parents were deported and the kids were thrown in foster care here. I worked with some of those kids during my first semester of law school internship. I can't talk about it without feeling like I'm there again.
Yeah.
The way that those kids were they seemed like they had completely checked out. Like even the 4-year-olds just seemed totally disassociated. Any adult that walked into the room, they were just kind of grabbing onto their pant leg and didn't know who to sort of latch onto. And it was really traumatic for them. It was a really horrible thing to observe. And now, that was all a stunt to try and scare people. Don't come. We're going to take your kids away. Don't think bringing your kids is going to keep you out of detention. And so that was all this big media stunt. And then, of course, a bunch of nonprofit organizations sued, and the lawsuit went on for years, which I don't think people appreciate how much that costs.
Yes.
When something has to be litigated at the federal level.
Yes.
All just for a couple of headlines of look how tough I'm being on immigration.
Right.
And so there were dozens and dozens of examples of that in the first administration. And each of these lawsuits can cost tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to litigate over the years. Not to mention it's backing up our court system for people who are trying to access it for legitimate things.
Right.
And then, millions of dollars had to be spent reunifying these families when the district court determined that they needed to be reunited and the policy was not legal. So it's a lot of wasted money. It's a lot of just show and scare tactics. And we pay for all that. American taxpayers bear the expense of all of that. And often it's, it could be, reimbursing attorneys' fees to the nonprofits that litigated the cases for years at no cost. And so these things pile up. And that's one extreme example, but there were many others.
It's interesting, because I was going to bring up Donald Trump's, use of playing hardball, because I think we just saw it with the Colombia flights that were sent back. So tried to deport these flights to Colombia. Colombia said no, send them back. Trump threatens the tariffs, and now it seems that they have reached a deal. So if you're just taking in these headlines, it seems like, all right, well, Trump played hardball and won. Can you expand upon that at all?
Yeah, I'll say, I think for his people who support him,
MAGA, yeah.
It's, that these things kind of start to lose steam after a while. And so the same thing happened last time. I won't say it got better over time. It certainly did not. But in the beginning, there's a lot of this yeah, like you said, hardball. And it's all a big show. And it's really just to create the appearance of, look, I'm delivering on my promise to you that I would be super tough on this. And it's as if the MAGA crowd sort of just kind of gets lulled into the, I knew he was going to do it. I knew he was going to keep up on his promises. But then there's no questioning of, okay, well, then what happens with these tariffs? Or, you know, what was the outcome of that agreement, right? Because that headline isn't sexy. Nobody's that interested in the technicality of it.
Absolutely.
So everyone's sort of just interested in the first part of it. And then he only has to do it a couple of times in the beginning and maybe a couple of times again throughout the administration if his ratings aren't good or something's happening or he just feels like it's been boring and he wants to shake things up. And so we end up seeing these things happen kind of in little spurts. And because we're in the first 2 weeks, it's been really active. But
absolutely,
yeah, it's totally a big show.
Yeah, because I'm like, we know that he's going to make a bunch of big moves in his first week. That's what he does. That's what he promises.
Yeah.
Have you, as an immigration lawyer, seen anything that in this first 9 days that you actually said, like, this is out of character? I've never seen something like this before. I should actually be really alarmed about this behavior or this possible legislation.
I think the first time, yes, the first time Trump was president, yeah, for sure. There were things that alarmed me that I think I never even imagined would happen. This time, I think I've been a lot less naive. I've just been prepared for the worst. I think the whole profession has been much more prepared this time.
Mm-hmm.
So people have been tracking, Project 2025
Yep.
and what kinds of, every time something immigration related is mentioned. And so there have been spreadsheets and all these things going around for almost a year warning us, this is on the chopping block. This is on his radar. This is going to be a day one thing. This is going to be a week one thing. So I don't think anything really has surprised me yet. I would say appalled for sure. The rollback of protections for churches and schools and hospitals,
Mm-hmm.
Where ICE is now permitted to enter what used to be, sensitive areas,
Mm-hmm.
is disgraceful. People are not seeking medical attention. My clients are afraid to go to the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
They're not wanting to bring their kids to school.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a good thing for anyone. It's not a good thing for the whole community, whether they're immigrants or not, if kids are in school and people aren't going to the hospital. So I would say that's probably one of the most appalling things that I thought hopefully would not happen. But here we are.
And it was today that Donald Trump is actually signing into law the Laken Riley Act. Am I correct in this? Do you have comments on the Laken Riley Act specifically?
Yeah. So the big issue is that, like I said, we talked about this in the beginning, that
Mm-hmm.
people have always been punished twice.
Right.
If they were born here.
Yes.
And so now we're seeing an expansion of that where it's no longer about, okay, let's be reasonable. Let's sort of triage or prioritize what is the kind of crime where someone has to not be allowed to stay. And what is the type of crime where we say, okay, was there harm? What does it say about the person's character, right? We always try to, in the law, create categories of things to make ourselves feel better about it, that it's, it's in this pile, it's not in that pile. The Laken Riley Act, I think, is one of the most broad, sweeping immigration policies since probably since the early 90s that we've had regarding the overlap of, criminal law and immigration law. So I think we're still going to have to see how it plays out in the courts. I think there's going to be a lot of confusion, but it's definitely going to have a big impact. And it's, the first thing of this size in probably just over 30 years.
And I think the standout thing for me reading it, and, I'm always trying to interpret law jargon. So, but the standout element was that, people would be deported just based on accusations. And I know you said previously people would be held in detention centers based on accusations. But now, I follow Attorney Martinez on Instagram, so a lot of my immigration law is from her. But it seemed like people could have been deported before they even get the chance at a trial. And so it kind of doesn't matter whether they were guilty or not, which obviously, if we're going just off of accusations in areas where people are especially unfriendly to immigrants, you would just make an accusation to get your neighbor or someone you didn't like kicked out of the country. It's really putting the power in the people's hands, but not in a positive way.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're going to see a lot of sort of whistleblowing kind of things happening. I will say that even prior to this act being signed, we've always had people get deported before they have their day in criminal court. And that might be, if you're arrested for a DUI or domestic violence and you're undocumented,
okay,
and you go to jail and you get bonded out, certain counties cooperate with ICE more than others.
Okay.
Some have formal agreements, some don't. But there's always been the possibility that if you get bonded out of jail, you might end up with ICE. And then the immigration system sometimes is faster than the criminal justice system. And so if you're not eligible for any relief here, like asylum or a family petition or a humanitarian visa, there was always a chance that you could end up in immigration detention, not be able to get bonded out of immigration detention for whatever reason, if you don't have the sponsor or the finances or what have you, be forced to go to trial on nothing, not having an application, not qualifying for anything, and being deported in spite of the fact that you hadn't yet been found guilty of the crime that landed you in immigration detention in the first place. So that was always a possibility. But it wasn't as common.
Okay.
Usually people can get out on bond, or, if their criminal charges aren't that serious, there are things that we can do. But now it's definitely going to be, I think, a much quicker pipeline. And there's going to be even less of a reason for judges to let people out on bond from immigration, because they're going to say, well, we have this other thing now. And, they're eligible to be deported whether they get convicted or not. Whereas before, we used to say, that would be a positive factor in our client's favor. Let's get him out on bond, judge. Let's see what comes of these criminal charges, and we'll go from there. And the judges would say, okay, innocent until proven guilty. I can get behind that. And now I think that's just gone out the window.
And then what? That's very question left my mind. I was going to say, yes. What is specifically the criteria that an individual needs to meet if they are seeking asylum, or is it really done on a case-by-case basis?
Yeah. So this is my bread and butter. You're going to be sorry you asked, because
no, I'm really interested. I'm sure I could look it up, but I mean, it says I would, you're here, so.
Sure. I'll try and keep it brief. So essentially, it's 5 elements.
Okay.
It's past persecution and or future persecution. There's a protected ground, so race, religion, nationality, political opinion, particular social group, things like that. And then there has to be a connection or a nexus between those two, that the harm is happening to you because of one of these protected grounds or characteristics. And then you have to be able to prove that you are unable to avail yourself of the protection of your country. So your government is unable or willing to control the person who is persecuting you, or the government itself is persecuting you. And it's a fairly low standard of about a 10% chance. But what we see in our immigration courts is that often we are pushed to sort of a higher burden. And so it can get really complicated, but it's worth it. We won an asylum case yesterday. Was in San Antonio for trial, and we won, and it was great, and it was not an easy case, but it's really rewarding, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can only imagine. That sounds excellent. So, I mean, I've been really upset by a lot of the regression of women's rights in Iran. So someone like that who you could come and you say, I'm a woman, my rights are being taken away from me. I can't seek education. I can't speak in public. They could seek asylum in the US and they would meet that criteria.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, usually the courts want to see some sort of individualized harm. So not all women whose rights are being infringed upon, but if you're someone who spoke out or attended a protest or put something on social media and got in trouble for it, they usually want to see some sort of individualized connection that, while there are all of these women who might be breaking the rules or speaking out, why is the government specifically interested in you, and why are you maybe more in danger than someone else?
Okay, interesting. That clears that up. And I guess we'll wrap up in a second. Thank you so much for your time. This was really helpful. I guess just because the point of this show is that we really do try to see from the perspective of the right and left. Would you have? It's hard to ask. I mean, this is your job, but would you have criticisms, about the relationship between immigrants, seeking asylum in their new country, or undocumented immigrants in general? Do you think there are any ways that they are bringing harm or hurting to the country or hurting the country? It's a difficult question to ask because I know again it goes kind of against your clients, but I feel like it's my obligation to ask the question.
No, not at all. I think that we're seeing a huge demographic shift in the United States, the biggest of its kind since, between World War I and World War II. And I honestly, I just find it fascinating, and I can't wait to see what my clients and their kids and the next couple of generations are able to accomplish. I think it's all good things. I think I heard you talking about being complacent earlier.
Yeah.
And how it's important not to get lulled into that sense of complacency. And I think that sometimes as Americans, we take it for granted.
Oh, yeah.
And then a new wave of immigrants comes in that is fleeing, political persecution in Nicaragua or Venezuela. And they come in with this renewed sense of I want to contribute. I want to hold the government accountable. I want to teach my kids how much they should appreciate these things that we have here. And so I think it's a beautiful thing. I think we need a constant, it's like this rotating door of people coming through and kind of reorienting us to where we're supposed to be and what our identity is and where we should be heading. And so I think it's a great thing. And we've certainly got plenty of room and plenty of jobs and of, need for all the help in the world and medical care. So many of our clients have essential worker jobs. They're doing things
That's a great point.
We can't do. They're providing services to nursing homes and hospitals. They're doing all kinds of things that Americans there's not enough of us to take care of it. They're building homes. We don't have enough homes.
It's like they're not coming and becoming TikTok influencers for the most part. That's why I'm just it's so funny to me because it's like a South Park episode again at this point, they're taking our jobs, but it's just these are things that you are unwilling, you don't want to do this. Someone needs to, you don't want to do this. And I welcome people who want to do this. And to your point, in New York City specifically, there is no one more excited to be Americans than people who just immigrated here or just got their citizenship. I have never seen people more excited. Even Canadians who just get their citizenship are excited. So I can only imagine people who are coming from political persecution. And we have a segment on this show called Could Be Worse, where I remind people that we cannot forget the luxury that we have living in America. And I totally understand that a lot of people don't have access to the things they need and are struggling monetarily. And that's something we absolutely need to concentrate on as a country. But it's certainly not we shouldn't be taking out that anger on immigrants. We should be taking that anger out on our government and on billionaires who are hoarding those funds.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of misplaced anger and scapegoating, and um, it's sad, it's unfortunate, but it's also totally predictable. I mean, this is how it goes, right? But
It is. You know what?
out with the old, in with the new. We're
That's
getting
the
new kinds
main
of
theme
people,
of
and
Trump term two is totally predictable. And so hopefully we're a little bit more well equipped to handle it this time. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything call to action that you want, whether people to help you in the work that you're doing, or what can we do to follow you, updates, whatever it is that you want to promote or to tell us about?
for sure. If you're based in New York City and you're looking for an organization to help with, I would strongly recommend Make the Road New York. It's a nonprofit organization with offices in Jackson Heights, Bushwick, I think New Jersey as well. They have locations all over the tri-state area and provide excellent legal services to immigrants, know your rights presentations, all kinds of things like that. And then there's also a Safe Passage Project, which their goal is that no child should be in immigration court without representation, because folks are not entitled to an attorney in immigration court like they are in criminal court. And that's where I had my first internship, and they're a great organization as well. So I would really recommend, donate, follow them, see what they're doing. Even if you're just curious and want to be educated, they put out great material all the time. So I would recommend those two organizations.
Awesome. Thank you so much for spending time with us on Without a Country and for all the incredible work that you're doing. I love that you are doing a good thing and you seem to genuinely really enjoy the work that you're doing. We definitely need more of that in this country.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and thanks for spreading the word into what you do.
Of course. Have a great night. Take care.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
All right. Well, that's great because there was so much information that we needed to cover regarding immigration. So Jacklyn covered that beautifully for us. Obviously, if you are in a profession where you are seeing perhaps a negative effect that immigrants are having on America, I welcome you to share that information with me, but it can't just be like, it has to be from an expert level, not just like an everyday person level. Mike apparently has someone on the line, but he's shaking his head, so it seems like it's just perhaps a guy who's angry. Mike, who do you have to share with us?
So I have been getting furious DMs for that entire segment from somebody who's on the ground in Austin, close by to. He literally said, I can look out my window and see the office that she works in.
Okay.
And the negative effect it's had on him. I told him to call in as soon as we're done with this next caller who's been waiting for like 45 minutes.
Okay.
Somebody who is a Staten Island local, who is a high school teacher trying desperately to inform his students that are scared to death for their parents.
Oh, for that their parents will be deported?
Yes.
Okay.
Donato is his name. Give me just 1 second and I'll get him on with you. Donato, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Donato. Thank you for waiting so long. You're on Without a Country.
Hey, Corinne. Thank you so much for doing this. This preface one. Preface two is I've met you a couple times. My best friend is Sal Volcano.
Oh,
okay?
Your best friend?
And
I love Sal.
Yeah.
I was going to say, this is so funny because I do have a theory that Sal Volcano is my connection to the entire Staten Island, which I told him last week. And now this is really proving my theory correct.
Okay. But the thing is that I'm a high school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a high school teacher for 18 years on the North Shore of Staten Island. Okay. I've taught Method Man's daughter, wrote her college resignation letter. Eric Gardner's son. Okay.
Wow.
You name it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Our school is very diverse. Okay. My first time of teaching was ELL. And the son of an immigrant parents, okay. So when Trump won the election the first time,
Mm-hmm.
I had students coming to me going, "What do I do?
Right.
Like, what is going to happen?" Okay. Now this time, because he's going full blast,
Right.
it's a whole other thing. Okay. And I've always helped extra the students of immigrant parents because I was that too. Okay. I should not be teaching English literature. My parents spoke broken English.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And considering he wrote a law today in regards to aiding more money towards, Catholic. It basically comes down to Catholic high schools. Okay,
Uh-huh.
Catholic schools or whatever. Okay, fine. Okay, but still, there are kids going, "What is going to happen to my parent?" Okay, he tried to do the birthright thing. It didn't work.
Right.
Okay, and it's just this thing of like, what the hell, in terms of like kids that just want to just be American, kids that just want to just experience a prom or whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, no kid should be live in fear that their parent is going to be deported and they're going to be put into foster care, as Jacklyn was just talking
Yeah,
about.
absolutely, yeah. And the Dream Act, what happened to that? That was going to be so awesome, But as a resident of Staten Island, basically I've witnessed the turn of Staten Island to pro-Trump.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I was actually talking to someone from Staten Island recently, and I mentioned that, New York City is, very democratic, but it has been turning a little bit. And Staten Island specifically, in comparison to the other four boroughs, has an extremely low number of registered Democrats. I mean, I don't know. I mean, so the person from Staten Island told me that there's like 500,000 people on Staten Island, and the number is like 65,000 are registered Democrats, and they were just absolutely shocked that the number that was that low.
Yeah, because people like me and Sal back in the day were into artistry and reading. Okay.
Yeah.
So the idea is that like you have a ton of people that didn't read, and all of a sudden, social media came along,
Right.
and they informed them of whatever. So it's like you're dealing with people that never read books, never understood things. Okay,
Yeah.
and now they're just like out there, and they're on their Instagram, and they're posting their flags and this and that. Like we never had flags before. We never had like when Bush won, it was like okay, whatever.
Right.
But now it becomes this thing of like, I always joke around and I say, okay, Guido is a guy that puts everything on his sleeve and hair. So henceforth, like he's gonna get the Trump tattoo. He's gonna get the Trump tattoo of him, whatever, doing whatever. And it's just like you say to yourself, "Oh my God, this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people that don't read. We're dealing with people that like need something to fulfill their whole."
Right. I'm always so shocked by at Italian Americans, and I'm Italian American, who are anti-immigration, because I'm like, how do you think you got here?
Corinne, they don't read. They don't read books.
Yeah.
It's almost like going to church on Sunday, and somebody offers a book, and they go, "That's a sin."
Oh,
literally, like
America's footloose, but instead of not dancing, it's not reading. I hear you. Yeah.
Exactly, Corinne, you're dealing with people that don't read. And it's so terrible because like I was never a Guido. I was never the guy to do whatever. I played in death metal bands. I was a drummer. I was a fucking kid in marching band.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And I saw the difference on Staten Island. And Staten Island's an interesting place because, again, it's the fulcrum of what's happening now.
Yeah.
Some of these guys that we used to know back in the day, and me and Sal used to go out, and we would see these guys with the cologne, with the hair, with the thing, and the other thing, and they have emptiness, and he's filling their void. Meanwhile, this is the one thing nobody's heard across the whatever. In the 80s, everybody in New York knew that Trump was not doing well. Trump was an asshole. Okay, so the whole thing of him bringing up this thing of like business greatness, no.
Right.
That guy was horrible.
Yeah,
Horrible.
this is a rebranding of his own doing. Well, that's fascinating. I think I do want to make the motto for America, people who aren't what did you keep saying? People who aren't they're not reading, they don't read books. I like that.
No, they don't. And it's like as a teacher of these kids, I'm trying my best to make them understand things. Now, remember, this is the fun part because I'm a huge Bill Burr fan, right? And I want to go see Glenn Ross in Manhattan. But David Mamet, the author, is so anti-teacher.
Really? I didn't know that about David Mamet. Why? What's his reasoning?
On the Joe Rogan podcast, he called out teachers as if we were lizards eating blood of whatever.
Oh, he has a Fox. It says playwright David Mamet claims on Fox News that teachers are inclined toward pedophilia.
Yes,
whoa!
Yes, exactly. Oh. Exactly. So it's like, come on, Dave. Like, you were the guy I read in college and I loved.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you bring it to this point of a union thing. What are you saying, guy? What are you fucking saying? You know?
That's really quite wild. Wow.
Yeah, no, it is so wild. It's like, at the end of the day, I'm a high school teacher. I go home. I write a plan for tomorrow. I teach English literature, okay? And I do admit, I teach the literature that is banned in Florida, you know? Because, yeah, fuck it. Let's have some fun. Let's read, Ginsburg. He's going to say the balls. He's going to say the cock. And the kids go, ooh, this is fun.
Those are fun words to say. Well, thank you so much for calling. I have a lot to get to on this show, but I appreciate you calling and listening.
Awesomeness.
There's so much bad things going on. I gotta cover them all.
I know. I'm putting up the middle fingers for you tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for calling. Have a great day. Do we have the additional caller, Michael?
No, it's like it does an annoying call waiting thing if somebody calls while the caller's on. So
okay.
I just told them to call in as soon as that was done. So I'll let you know as soon as that comes
All
in.
right. Well, yeah, let's get to a little more reading, and then we're probably going to have to cap the calls for the night just because we've did, with the interview and everything. We spent a lot of time hearing from others. Real quick, we're going back to that Gaza condoms fact check. So Washington Post then tonight around 5:30 posted an article that said $50 million for condoms in Gaza. There's no evidence for the White House claim. The figure would reign 1.5 billion condoms on an area only double the size of the District of Columbia. In her maiden news briefing, Carolyn Leavitt defended the Trump administration's freeze on federal grants by pointing to a particular line item as preposterous, $50 million to fund condoms in Gaza. Regular readers know that we have a high bar for fact-checking flacks as they are paid to mislead and dissemble. We prefer to keep our scrutiny on policymakers and people with authority, but this was Leavitt's first news conference, and she made an astonishing claim that spread rapidly on social media. And the quote is, DOJ and OMB also found that there was about to be $50 million taxpayer dollars that went out the door to fund condoms in Gaza. That is a preposterous waste of taxpayer money. So that's what this pause is focused on, being good stewards of tax dollars. And again, this Trump administration knows exactly what they're doing. They're good publicity acquirers. They're good stuntmen. They're showmen, right? So that's why they are better at the Democratic Party in garnering attention, because they know how to sell a story, which unfortunately is something that is now required to get the American people to listen to your point. Back to the article. Could it be true? When we queried Leavitt, she responded by sending a Fox News article that initially just quoted her own statement. Quoting yourself is not evidence. And I think a lot of people need to remember that, right? Moreover, the article quoted an unnamed White House official as saying that the State Department halted several $1 million going to condoms in Gaza this past weekend. That's not the same as $50 million. Last year, the State Department launched a 5-year, $50 million program to improve healthcare in Gaza, but the contractor, ANNOY, said it was not supplying condoms. Definitely no purchase of condoms in our program, and there are no components for family planning in the GHRA, Gaza Health Recovery Activity. Spokesman Steve Fake said, "We have asked around and no one is sure what this is referring to." Last night, State Department, because it's interesting because there was a part of me that was thinking like, well, I don't know that the people of Gaza, especially religious people, would really be responsive to family planning elements like, or as responsive, especially like birth control. It seems like that might be, even if we were sending that is almost like, throwing Western culture that they didn't ask for to them. But that's just kind of an idea that popped into my head. I didn't look that up. Last night, State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce posted a thread on X in which she cited examples of unjustified and non-emergency spending. The first example was condoms prevented $102 million in unjustified spending to a contractor in Gaza, including money for contraception. She did not identify the contractor, but in an email to the State Department reporters, her office said it was $102,236,000 to fund the International Medical Corps in Gaza. IMC is a global first responder based in Los Angeles. Could half or even a significant portion of that contract be for condoms? There is no evidence of that. The facts. Let's start with why the U.S. government distributes condoms overseas. It's to prevent the spread of HIV and AIDS. Perhaps the Trump administration believes that this is a preposterous waste of money, but many of those condom purchases are for a George W. Bush program called the U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, which you will see shortened as PEPFAR, which is credited with saving 26 million lives. No countries or territories in the Middle East are part of PEPFAR. More broadly, the U.S. Agency for International Development distributes condoms to address gaps in their availability and use, especially in low and middle-income countries, to prevent the spread of sexually transmitted diseases. And even up here, like kind of just my initial thinking, does seem to check out because, again, no countries or territories in the Middle East are part of PEPFAR because when you read what PEPFAR is, you go, yeah, it doesn't seem like they're going to let the West kind of talk to or have any influence on how they are having sex, right? Because that's a part of the U.S. culture that they, traditionally don't like. And I'm not saying that there's no, sexually progressive people there. But that is an overall criticism that we're always sticking our Western culture and Western myths into countries that are not interested, right? A USAID report for fiscal 2023, the most recent detailing condom expenditures unrelated to PEPFAR, showed that about $46,000 was spent on condoms in the Middle East, but only in Jordan. The report said that was the first shipment of condoms to the Middle East since fiscal 2019, when $1 million was spent. Indeed, according to the report, spending $50 million on condoms for an entity roughly double the size of Washington would be a huge increase in condom spending. From fiscal 2016 to 2022, USAID spent $108.6 million to buy 3.6 billion male condoms for 60 countries. That's an average of $17 million a year for the entire world. 1/3 of the amount Levitt said would be spent just on Gaza. USAID also distributes female condoms, but that's a small fraction of the spending. I mean, everywhere. Am I right? In effect, USAID has been buying condoms at an average price of 3.3 cents. Was the U.S. government really going to distribute more than 1.5 billion condoms in Gaza? That makes little sense. Traditionally, family planning in the Palestinian territories, including Gaza, was handled by the United Nations Relief and Works Agencies for Palestine refugees in the Near East. The agency distributed oral contraceptives and condoms, but President Joe Biden froze U.S. funding a year ago after Israel claimed that 12 of the agency's 33,000 employees participated in Hamas's 2023 attack on Israel. The war that erupted after that attack created a family planning crisis in Gaza. According to the International Planned Parenthood Federation, contraception is also in very short supply, with reports of women sharing contraceptive pills leading to unintended pregnancies. And again, I have to look. The IPPF said in a 2023 report, The unavailability of condoms, which were already heavily restricted in Gaza, will lead to the transmission of sexually transmitted infections, including HIV. Right, and so it's not necessarily like that the people of Gaza aren't interested in family planning. It's more like what I thought, like the government, the religion, the overall culture is kind of like not less interested in it. Not in that individual people perhaps aren't interested in it. With the ceasefire now in place, it's possible there is a pressing need to fill, but we would not find any evidence that the International Medical Corps contracts called for a condom delivery. Todd Bernhardt, IMC spokesman, told the fact checker that no U.S. government funding was used to procure or distribute condoms. In a November report describing its activities in Gaza, IMC said it deployed 2 state-of-the-art field hospitals, the first in January 2024 with 200 beds, and the second in July 2024 with 50 beds. The hospitals operate 24 hours per day, 7 days per week. Each day they see as many as 2,000 patients, perform an average of 45 surgeries, and deliver an average of 10 babies, the report said. It did not mention any family planning efforts. All right, so that's up to date on that. So it's very interesting because, like I said, a lot of times what we'll see from outlets like Fox News is that they take a piece of information and really hone in on it. And it's not that it's misinformation. It's just not the whole full story. And now what the Trump administration seems to be doing is just lying. I mean, not that this is a new thing, but I mean, that's one step further than Fox News. So feels like we really need to be fact-checking and not just spreading misinformation, which was always the case. And it's the case on the right and the left. Absolutely, for sure. I don't at all want you to think that, because you hear something from a news outlet that you usually think is trustworthy, that you shouldn't be trying to find that same story or similar information in at least a second news source. Again, that is the criteria that journalists are supposed to be abiding by, that you can't report something unless you have it from 2 independent sources. So I feel like we as consumers of the news should probably be following the same rules, right? If you anytime I can only find something one place, I go, I don't know that this is something that I really want to dive into any further. An interesting thing moving forward. Yes, Michael.
Speaking of diving into something, we have
a pool on the line.
We have that caller on the ground in Tejas by the border. Sir, are you there?
Hey, y'all hear me?
Hi, caller. What's your name?
It's fine. I don't need to mention it just because I'm not trying to freak her out.
Freak who out?
That was. I don't see her office out of my window, but she's around the block.
And she knows you on a first name basis?
No, she doesn't know me. I thought I was I thought I was tripping, and I was listening to the show, and I went outside, walked around the block. I'm like, oh yeah, that's exactly, yeah.
So this is a woman that, so you see Jacklyn walking in your neighborhood is what you're trying to tell me.
No.
Oh.
One of her offices, because remember at the end of the show.
The firm's office. Okay.
Yeah, one of the firm's office. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I'm going to preface this whole thing with one question for you. Corinne, would you invite somebody through your front door or come home and see that they have broken through the windows and helped themselves to your fridge?
That wasn't really a fully formed question. What?
No, okay, so this is a simple analogy regarding the illegal alien situation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm an immigrant who's actually naturalized. So
where are you from?
I'm from a shithole country called Russia.
Okay.
So please respect my immigrant experience.
Okay.
So my question is,
in my experience, no one's actually more racist against immigrants than other immigrants. But okay.
You can laugh. I mean, I laugh too because it's funny and true. But the question is, just as an analogy, in your own personal life, would you prefer you invite somebody into your home through the front door, knowing that they're arriving, or would you rather come home and see that there's somebody you don't know has broken in through your window and is helping themselves to your fridge.
Yeah, I mean, I
And
understand.
you just
I understand what you're doing here. Obviously, everyone's going to choose invite in through the front door. That's even how we
okay.
let vampires in.
So okay, yeah. So that we can agree on this, right? Then I can get
Let's
to
move forward with the hardcore point you're trying to make because I'm really dying to hear it.
okay. So that office, I moved into this block in this neighborhood in like 2019.
Okay.
Very nice neighborhood, quiet. All my neighbors, because I'm very close to University of Texas, a lot of my neighbors are students and just like normal working people.
Mhm.
And then everything was going good. And then around 2019, 2020, some Chinese guy got sick and everyone else in the world somehow got
Okay,
sick.
but we don't need that. We don't need your weird background of COVID retold to us. What's the
So-
point you're trying to make about immigrants in your area?
So basically around, I'd say like a year after Biden got in, what is it? Before that, a lot of people left. My whole, like the complexes I lived in got desolate. Then they started getting filled up. There's a lot of people who had no idea how to speak English. And then I had a lot of Afghani, fresh Afghani neighbors because of the withdrawal. The only words they understood was U.S. State Department. They already had keys to the, they were in the units above me and below me and next to me. And they somehow had keys, but they were asking me how to contact the office. And then
So far the crimes that we have are can't speak English and confused.
Now, hold on, I'm gonna get this. Now, within the last 2 years, they've been being filled up with a bunch of Latinxes. And these ain't Mexican Latinxes. These are other kinds of Latinxes. And I grew up in Houston. Like, I know all my different kinds of browns and blacks. Like, I can tell them all apart. You can quiz me all you want. It got to the point where even the management, the maintenance, the office staff all got replaced by Latinxes, and none of them can speak English, and they have to call somebody for a translator, and they can barely speak English. Now,
I mean, to me, this seems like the people that are hiring are trying to get some kind of a budget cut, and this is not that taking a job is not a crime.
Corinne, how many times would you get seeing this? Would you start getting concerned when it's 3 a.m. and you see clearly very, very young teenage girls, clearly pregnant, being shuffled around in the hallways at 3 a.m? All of them different, like maybe once or twice a month.
I don't know. I don't know what point you're trying to make here.
No. How often would you tolerate them selling drugs in the parking lot? How often would you tolerate them inviting other criminals to come shoot guns through their front doors in the morning? How often would you tolerate them playing reggaeton? I don't have a problem if they play corridos.
That was a bit of a jump when you went from drug selling and gun shooting to playing reggaeton. I got to be honest. When you tell this story next time, I would leave the reggaeton part out.
No. See,
just a small edit.
I'm telling you, I have a tolerance where I don't care if you play music till 1 a.m. That's fine. That doesn't bother me. Might it bother other people? I don't care. It doesn't bother me. But when it's 4 a.m, I don't need your children to be running in my hallway using it as a playground. I don't need a constant circulation.
This is something you would call your landlord about. What is the issue? What is the actual
about my
issue?
Landlord. I told you about my landlord. All my landlords been replaced by people who can't speak English.
I understand how that can be frustrating, but that is again like you're blaming the people who took the jobs when you should be blaming the people who are saving money for hiring these people because they're obviously hiring the people because they're charging less for the same work as Americans. Very clear.
They're trespassing. Do you understand that part? They're all trespassing.
No, I don't. I don't believe that. Mostly
They
everyone in America is a
They
trespasser
are.
because it's a land that was owned by indigenous people. So this makes no sense. I can't do this
So
anymore,
you're
Mike.
a trespasser.
This is like yes. I am a trespasser. Exactly. Thank you. You understand my point.
Oh, yeah,
Great.
so why-
We
why
agree.
did you-
End of
okay,
call, Mike. I can't do this
okay.
anymore. This is a real show. That's the same guy. It's I can tell by the accent. He won't say his name. Who is that Slav? He's banned from the show. Well, don't let him through, Mike. You know he's banned from the show.
Didn't know he was officially banned.
He's
This is the
banned,
first
and
time
I
I've
can
read
tell
this
by the accent.
conversation.
That's why he won't give his name. This is like a character calling me. If someone else has a shared viewpoint that is as ignorant as him, let him through, because then that's actually a new person. But this is just wasting people's time.
We do have somebody with a shared viewpoint.
No, we're done. We're done with the show. I said I don't. That's too much time. So if you had paid attention to banning Slav, we can get to this person. But
It's not a caller. It's a super chat.
Okay, what's the super chat?
Super chat, $2. Corinne, spend a week at the border, and then another $2 saying they love your hair color.
Oh my God. Okay.
Same person.
So spend a week at the border, but again, like, what's the point we're trying to make? It's not like I'm not unfamiliar with what it's like to live in a place where there's a lot of immigrants coming through. I live in fucking New York City. I understand. Again, we had a conversation. Me and Alfred used to walk by Tompkins Square Park, and it was non-immigrants on every single bench waiting for job opportunities. We talked about this several months ago. It's not like I don't know or don't see. And again, I will reiterate, none of those people bothered me. They were just chilling, having snacks. Didn't bother me. Wasn't bothering anyone. No one was bothered. The only person who would be bothered, I guess, is if you wanted to sit on a bench and you didn't have access to a bench. That is the only reason I could see that you would be bothered, but you could sit on the grass. Anyway, so also, if you're interested, there's you can go to whitehouse.gov, and there's been obviously this administration is now updating this website. So there's a presidential actions portion where it says it's covering the first 100 hours, historic action to kick off America's golden age. And it's kind of just interesting to see on the official White House website what's going on. A lot of things, so I'm not going to read the whole thing on the show, but it says President Donald Trump's second term is off to an historic start. The president is wasting no time delivering on the promises he made to the American people. The president signed more executive orders on his first day in office than any other president in history. Within the first 100 hours on his second administration, President Trump taken there's a has missing here. It should say has taken, but it says taken hundreds of executive actions to secure the border, deport criminal illegal immigrants, unleash American prosperity, lower costs, increase government transparency, and reinstitute merit-based hiring in the federal government. The president has already secured over $1 trillion in historic new investment. And it says, we're witnessing the Trump effect. And then it goes on to list all the things that this man has accomplished. So if you're interested, definitely keep your finger on the pulse of what he's doing there. And then just to kind of put a button on that immigration conversation, I thought the conversation with Jacklyn that we had was really eye-opening, right? Because something I do agree with is that, if you are here undocumented, if you haven't gone through the legal process to become an American citizen, yes, it makes sense that you should be held to higher standards. And we're already doing that. You heard Jacklyn lay out the plans. But what is absolutely unacceptable, in my opinion, is deporting parents of children, then putting children who are traumatized into the foster care system, which is already has so many children who need stable homes in it that are already here. Like, this is I don't understand how people think we can continue to do truly evil things and that our future will be okay, right? There's so much talk on, from Trump supporters that they want a better future for their families, for their children. I do not believe in karma at all. Do not believe in that the things that we do that are bad will not come back to haunt us. Like, do you not think that? It's just acting like a civil human being. All right, really quickly, if you want to subscribe to my Patreon. You can head over to patreon.com/withoutacountry. I want to give a shout out, as always, to our dictator, Hannah Pendergrass. Very sorry that you have to share the floor with Donald Trump now. A new capitalist pig, Alexandra Lineweber, and some new cuties, Ivy Espana. I know I've read your name before, but maybe you changed tiers. Katie, Ray Hayes, and Kira Lysang. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. And again, if you want to get one exclusive video news story every week that is posted on Thursday, so the day after the original episode airs, head over to patreon.com/withoutacountry. You can join for as little $6 a month and have access to usually like 15 to 30 more minutes of show. And I do try to vary the topics that we talk about. Again, I kind of said like hysteria on the right. There's a Fox News story that says Tim Walz says losing presidential election is pure hell. He admits Democrats are fatigued in an MSNBC interview. He says, I'll just pick some quotes that he said during this interview. He said, "You know that overused term, the frog in the boiling water? We've been in the damn pot way too long," Walz said. "I think it is speaking up. It's thinking about your neighbors. It's writing and putting those members of Congress. Look, there is no spine among those folks, but this is real." And this is in response to Rachel Maddow asking him what advice he'd give to average people who oppose the agenda that Donald Trump has implemented since he's returned to office. He said to the voters, "I'm with this too. Everybody's fatigued. Trust me, I get it. It was pure hell, and the disappointment and the frustration. And, I'm soul searching. What could we have done to make the case? Because we knew this was coming. We knew the implication. And they're throwing so much at us that we're fatigued." And we talked about that at the top of the show, to not let them make you feel fatigued, right? You can't be this reactive to everything that's happening. You will tire yourself out. I'm going to talk really quickly about the federal worker resignation ban. As someone in the pre-show did request that we talk about this. This is from the Washington Post. "Resign, stick it out, fight. Federal workers mull Trump buyout offer. Federal workers feel caught in limbo after the White House offered a chance to resign with pay through September 30th. The deadline to decide is February 6th. The clock on Wednesday was already quickly winding down on a Trump administration offer to federal employees to resign with pay through September 30th, as a mother worried about being fired while her husband, also a federal employee, searches for a new job of his own. A national park ranger was concerned that park staff, already stretched thin, will be stretched even further if colleagues leave and openings go unfilled. And a health and human services attorney lamented over potentially leaving what she had believed was a secure job she loves. They are among the thousands of federal workers caught in limbo amid a flurry of steps taken by the Trump administration to remake and shrink the ranks of the federal workforce. Today's email blast from the Office of Personnel Management that gave them until February 6th to make a decision on whether to voluntarily leave represented the latest source of anger and confusion as they continue to do their jobs. It's this catch-22, right? He's like, okay, well, we're going to save the American government money, but, the American people money, but perhaps the part that was left out in Trump's pitch is that he was going to be saving you money by firing some of you. The offer and its timeline before life-altering decisions had to be made, a mere 9 days, fueled vows from federal workers to resist what they see as an attempt to push them out of careers rooted in public service. While these are people who are already overworked and underpaid. I think, as is the most case for government jobs, and ones at this level, not the higher ranking ones, while others expressed an overwhelming sense of exhaustion 10 days into the Trump presidency. "We open our inbox every day, and it's just a parade of terrible announcements making our jobs harder," said Rachel, who works in the Department of Health and Human Services office of the secretary and spoke on the condition that only her middle name was used to avoid professional retribution. I'm afraid we're going to lose all our best workers, she said. There just won't be the institutional knowledge we need to help keep patients safe. According to the White House, most of the 2.3 million federal workers are eligible for the buyout incentive. Agency heads may make exceptions, and military personnel, U.S. Postal Service employees, and people working in immigration enforcement and national security are exempt, according to the Office of Personnel Management. Democratic lawmakers and unions began advising workers late Tuesday to not take it, with Senator Tim Kaine, Democrat Virginia, warning on the Senate floor that Trump could stiff you, which is an excellent point, right? Because this is not a man who is known for keeping his promises. A federal employment attorney, however, said the Trump administration probably has the authority to carry out the offer, though he anticipates litigation. We've been getting a surge of calls since last night from federal employees with a lot of questions about it. What does it mean? Can it be rescinded? Is it lawful? Said Greg Rinke, a founding partner at the law firm Tully Rinke PLC, who specializes in federal employment law. Based on the conversations he's had with workers, he expects 5 to 10% to take the offer. For some of them, it's a no-brainer. He said if they're telling us that they're having problems on a performance improvement plan, I'm telling them to take this in a heartbeat because they're probably going to get fired anyway. All right, we're going to leave it there just because we have so much to get to, but just so we are covering kind of everything that is happening. What the hell is happening? All right, great part of the show where my computer dies. It's something about this basement that we work out of. It has to be. Because I can't see anything. All right, let me see if my phone will do it. It would almost be disappointing if this, part of the show didn't happen, I would say. Okay. I mean, what? Okay. Let's see if that's that. Let me see what I really wanted to get into. Let's go into the trans military ban. I think that's important to cover, again, just because it is an issue, I hate to say issue. It's a group of people and that hate towards them has a lot more political influence than I had originally assessed. I'll say it that way. This is from the Associated Press. Trump is looking to boot transgender troops from the military. Here's why that is complicated. All right, here we go. President Donald Trump has launched his second bid to oust all transgender troops from the military, and once again, it will be headed to the courts to sort it out. Although the new order will affect only a tiny fraction of America's 2.1 million service members, it has taken on oversized importance to Trump and his administration, who see transgender forces as a sign the military is woke or not focused on training and winning wars, right? And so again, when we're talking about a political party, Republicans, who love to be very conscientious about money, it is interesting that this is then heading to court because that will ultimately waste more money. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, before he took the job, wrote in his book, War on Warriors, that for the recruits, for the military, and primarily for the security of the country, transgender people should never be allowed to serve. It's that simple. Would love more details on why he thinks it's not safe for the country. I think anyone who meets the criteria physically and mentally to serve in the military should serve in the military, because the rest of us don't want to. You believe me, You don't want someone to begrudgingly serve in the military. That's not good for anybody. Trump's order, or against their will, like a draft, Trump's order to push out transgender troops issued late Monday night was instantly condemned by an array of activist groups as exceptionally egregious and ultimately harmful to military readiness. They say transgender people have been serving successfully for years, including openly on and off for the past decade. Here's a look at what it means and the confusing duel over the ban for the past decade. What does the order say? Trump's order essentially says that anyone who is diagnosed with surgical needs involved in taking on a different gender identity conflicts with a soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle. It concludes that a man's assertion that he is a woman and his requirement that others honor this falsehood is not consistent with the humility and selflessness required of a service member. The order also zeroes in on the heady bathroom issue. On his first day in office, Trump issued an executive order that he said would restore biological truth to the federal government by eliminating the word gender and replacing it with sex. He said the federal government will only recognize people based on their sex at the time of conception, based on their reproductive cell, which, I mean, there was something floating around the internet, but basically, like, we're all the same sex at conception. And it's not until later that the sex of the cell is even decided. His latest order expands on that, saying the military will neither allow males to use or share sleeping, changing, or bathing facilities designated for females, nor allow females to use or share sleeping, changing, or bathing facilities designated for males. Now what? The Pentagon has said in recent years that it is impossible to count the total number of transgender troops. The military services say there is no way to track them and that much information is limited due to medical privacy laws. Estimates have hovered between 9,000 and 12,000, but it would be very difficult for officials to identify them, even as service members worry about the hunt to root them out. And all that stuff, all that investigating takes time and money. This casts an enormous shadow on people that are getting ready to go on a deployment for 6 months overseas or, getting ready to go on a combat mission, said Sasha Bouchert, counsel for Lambda Legal. This is going to be extremely disruptive, and they're going to have to look over their shoulder in fear of when the next shoe will fall. Since transgender troops have been able to serve openly for a number of years, it's possible their fellow unit members or commanders know who some of them are. That triggers worries about people identifying them in order to get them pushed out. So again, we're seeing a similar pattern here, right? Counting on the Trump administration, counting on everyday Americans to be whistleblowers to other everyday Americans, right? Pitting us against one another, making you unsure of your neighbor. When you are scared, when you're untrustworthy, when you're unsure of who the person is sitting next to you, you are more likely to go with a government that is harsh, that is playing hardball, that is slowly slipping into a dictatorship because you go, well, these guys have everything under control. We really got to lock it down because everything's out of control right now. I mean, this really is. I mean, this is a playbook. This is out of the playbook of Nazi Germany when people were tattling on Jews and their Gentile neighbors who were hiding Jews. Come on, guys. I promise you, I don't even like an adult with hall monitor energy, never mind a tattletale, someone ratting out their neighbors to be deported or outing them as transgender and not allowing them to serve in the military. This is crazy. And raises parallels to the Clinton administration's Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, which I was thinking about this whole time, which allowed gays to serve in the military as long as they didn't tell, which was like such a cop-out weird thing. In March 2018, then Defense Secretary James Mattis released a memo with unprecedented details on the number of transgender forces and how many of them had sought mental health help or were planning to seek surgery, right? That's the only part of this that I can understand. But like, you wouldn't then single out transgender people. You would, and this is already in play, there are certain mental health criteria that people in the military need to meet in order to serve. And that is extremely important. If you are carrying a gun, you absolutely should be held to the highest mental health standards. And so I guess the only argument, and it's not one that I would agree with, but that you could bring up, wouldn't be about wokeness. It would be that you would have to argue that someone experiencing gender dysphoria was going through or experiencing a mental health crisis that made them dangerous to be around. That's the point that you would have to prove. And like, then you go back into, well, is someone who is gay experience a mental health crisis, kind of things like that. I mean, and even people who are transitioning again, they are going through mental health evaluations to make sure that, their gender dysphoria that they're experiencing is legitimate, makes sense. So again, like, just trying to break it down. So I do 100% agree that you need to be in the fittest of mental health to be serving in the military. And then this is also so hypocritical because we all know how we treat veterans in this country, right? So, it's so important that we're in the most upstanding mental health when we enter the military. And then these people are completely disregarded after they see the most horrendous things, experience death eye to eye at eye level, see their friends die, experience debilitating, life-changing wounds and PTSD. And then that's when the government goes, yeah, I guess we'll get you like whatever we can, whenever we have the opportunity to do that. It said at the time there were 8,980 service members who identified themselves as transgender, and 937 had been diagnosed with gender dysphoria. The report said data collected by the military health system revealed that 424 of those service members diagnosed had gotten treatment plans approved, and for at least 36 of them, those plans didn't include cross-sex hormone therapy or sex reassignment surgery. This isn't the first time. In 2015, then Defense Secretary Ash Carter broached the idea of lifting the ban on transgender troops and allowing them to serve openly, which raised concerns among military leaders. He set up a study and then about a year later in June 2016 announced the ban was ended. A year after that, just 6 months into his first presidential term, Trump suddenly announced via tweet he was not going to allow transgender people to serve in the military in any capacity. The tweets caught the Pentagon by surprise and plunged leaders into what became a roughly 2-year struggle to hammer out the complex details of who would be affected by the ban and how it would work, even as legal challenges poured in. By March 2019, as courts ruled against the ban, the Pentagon laid out a policy that allowed those currently serving to continue with plans for hormone treatments and gender transition if they had been diagnosed with gender dysphoria. But it barred new enlistments of anyone with gender dysphoria who was taking hormones or had transitioned to another gender. And it said in the future, those diagnosed with gender dysphoria must serve in their birth gender and were barred from taking hormones or getting transition surgery. Soon after President Joe Biden took office in 2021, he overturned Trump's ban, and the Pentagon also announced it would cover transition medical expenses for troops. How has it worked out? The chiefs of all 4 military services told members of Congress in 2018 that they were seeing few problems as transgender troops began serving openly. And I know you could say, well, what the fuck? Like, why are we paying for people's gender transition surgery or reassignment surgery? And I can understand that, right? It's costly. I guess to someone not experiencing gender dysphoria, it would seem like, mental health that is not needed. But what I would say is the military has a long history of paying for things as an incentive for people to serve because people don't want to serve, right? That's my criticism of programs like the ROTC that's basically grooming people who come from lower income households. And I'm not saying, I know some people have had a very positive experience in ROTC and the military, and it really got them, to be the man or the woman they are today. Great. That's amazing. The story isn't about you. Okay. But what I'm saying is I do feel like a lot of times, the government dangles this promise of paying for your college education over the heads of people who otherwise would not have the financial ability to go to college. And I think that's really shitty. So again, historically, paying for something that someone wants as an incentive to enter the military is not a new thing. And gender reassignment surgery is cheaper than college. How has it worked out? The chiefs of all 4 military services told members of Congress in 2018 they were seeing few problems as transgender troops began serving openly. The Navy chief at the time, Admiral John Richardson, said the Navy was dealing with the issue the same way it handled the integration of women sailors on submarines. And the Marine Commandant then, General Robert Neller, said there were no unit cohesion or discipline problems. His only concern, he told a Senate committee, was that some commanders were saying they had to spend a lot of time with transgender people as they worked through medical requirements involving their transition to their preferred gender. Sarah Klim, a transgender Marine who served for 23 years, retired just as the end to the ban was announced in 2016, so was never able to serve openly. Trans military members that are out there right now are dropping bombs, pulling triggers, fixing all the weapon systems, she said Tuesday, and now you're looking to keep them away. Klim, who is now a policy analyst for Minority Veterans of America, said it's an especially precarious time to remove thousands of service members as recruiting has been a struggle. Emily Schilling, who has been openly transgender since 2019, is currently serving as a commander in the Navy with more than 19 years of service, including as a combat pilot who flew 60 missions in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. I just want to continue serving my country, using the skills this nation invested in me as a fighter pilot and leader, she said, stressing that she was speaking in her personal capacity. For nearly 2 decades, I've upheld the highest standards of excellence, leading teams in combat and peace. All I ask is the opportunity to keep using my training and experience to serve this country with honor, courage, and dedication. And what I will say is, good on you, because I can't imagine living in a country where more than half the people don't give a shit about me, elected a person who would do this, and then saying, all I want to do is serve you and protect you. Wow. That takes a lot. I don't have that in me, so good for you. And again, even if you're a pacifist like me, I just, you in America, especially with a president who likes to play hardball and make threats, this is not the time to be understaffed in the military, okay? And again, I don't want to serve. You probably don't want to serve. So who's going to serve? Okay, we'll kind of wrap it up. Let's see one thing. Okay, let's wrap it up with this article from Fox News. And this is from Wacko Hannah, not Hannah Pendergrass, a different Hannah. And we're going to talk about the Democratic Party. This article is perfect for this show. It says former Obama staffers urge Democrats to stop speaking like a press release, learn normal people language. Yeah, we're all getting stupider, and so the Democratic Party should definitely speak to us as if we're stupider. And listen, this is great for me. You know, my vocabulary is expanding every day, and I also think it's a disservice to the Democratic Party to speak in collegiate language, because not only does it mean that more people won't come over to the Democratic Party. More people will stray for ideas and news articles that they can understand. I think, and I think I'm definitely guilty of this. It can put this idea in everyday Americans' heads, especially those of us who enjoy being politically active, that we perhaps wouldn't be fit to run for a position in Democratic government because we don't have a degree from an Ivy League school, right? And again, you've heard me talk about that's something that I really like about AOC is that she speaks in language that's accessible, and and she's also started in politics when she's very young. Again, the story is that went from waitressing to politics, which is a little inaccurate. The true story is she was working, for nonprofits, was waitressing to earn extra money, and then went into it. But it's also like, just because you're a waitress doesn't mean that you don't know big words. So what? But I think we just really need to have people who have good ideas, good follow through, are tough as fucking nails, that's for sure, and will get the job done. I was watching, I love Representative Jasmine Crockett. She's probably my favorite politician right now. And she just got, reelected. And I think it's really cool because she did an Instagram reel from her car before going in to the ceremony. And she was just like, I want to talk about all this bullshit that's going on with the new Trump administration. And she used the word bullshit. And at first I was like, wow, I can't believe she's like, cursing. I love cursing, but it's something that, I've been concerned about if I were to pursue a career in politics, that I would really have to clean up the way I speak. But I don't necessarily think that is the move. And I think they're gonna have to be people, and Representative Jasmine Crockett can be one of them, that are going to have to say, like, hey, maybe we are going to have to speak in language that is more similar to Donald Trump, but that doesn't mean that we have to tell lies or take advantage of people, right? And I think that we just have to be really clear on that. So Pod Save America co-host Jon Favreau told MSNBC that assuming people are going to vote for us based on their identity is a loser. And I agree with that 100%. The identity politics is absolutely killing the Democratic Party. And I think we saw a real backpedaling from I'm with her, from Hillary's campaign to Kamala's campaign, right? We barely saw Kamala address the fact that she was a woman. First of all, you don't need to address it. You see it. A woman and a person of color, right? She didn't talk about that very much. And I thought that was good because she wasn't running on you should vote for me because I'm a woman or you should vote for me because I'm a person of color. But it's not just her who is running with that talking point, right? So even though she didn't run with that talking point, certainly other people in the Democratic Party did. And while I do believe in DEI, and I do think that people need to be included and diversity is a strength, I never believe that people should win solely because we have X amount of people and we need a different kind of person, right? I don't think that's a winning tactic. It makes us look weak and it makes us look like we don't know what we're doing. We need to elect people who are strong leaders, who have a vision, and will fight. Former Obama staffers John Lovett and Jon Favreau urged Democrats to talk like normal people on Wednesday and urged members of the party to stop speaking like a press release. If we want to be a party that can win elections, we have to be a party people would want to attend. That's a great line. And again, having been to a Trump rally, although the ideas of the people at that rally do not vibe with me, the overall energy, did vibe with me. And that's not just like that it was fun, because it was super fun. I mean, until we got to, some real critical thinking. But there was also a real openness, and Christina and I talked about this on Guys We Fucked, and I talked about it here, but there was a real openness to be willing to talk to us as obvious Democrats, as obvious reporters for The Daily Show, that I just don't think we would have seen on the right. I mean, on the left. And so I love that. I love that sentence. If we want to be a party that can win elections, we have to be a party people would want to attend. And I don't necessarily think that's a good sign for America. I don't think this is a good sign because it's turning into school elections where there's like the most popular person wins. But I think it is a truth about America. Okay? And so those are two different things. And you see a Trump rally and people are having a good time at that event and Trump is mixing it up. And you talked about how do we take on misinformation? How about a Democrat that's doing 2-hour press conferences, that's going everywhere, that can mix it up with everyone, that can go on Joe Rogan? That seems like a good hang, Lovett said. And really, if we were comfortable as a party playing identity politics, to me, it doesn't seem really any different that we now, instead of, focusing on identity, we go back to a traditional personality contest, right? Because that's why Barack Obama won. If you look into it, Barack Obama, compared to the other people that were vying for the Democratic nomination, he was an underdog. That was not someone that anyone expected to win that nomination. But that man can give a speech. He feels like a leader. He feels like, someone that you want to have a beer with. And again, I don't think this is necessarily a great direction for America, but it's who we are, right? This is why the kind of the most mediocre people stay in entertainment business the longest, because they're not ruffling any feathers. MSNBC's Joe Scarborough asked the co-hosts of Pod Save America, John Lovett, John Favreau, and Johnny Veter, about how the Democratic Party should be more enticing, lamenting that the Democrats were downers and it shouldn't have been so easy for the Republicans. Favreau chimed in and said they shouldn't talk like a press release, urging Democrats to write their own social media posts. Yeah, go a little bit off. Be relatable. And I think part of this is a little bit of a PTSD from cancel culture, right? We're so worried about saying the wrong thing. And even I, to a certain extent, went through that. But I healed myself of any PTSD I had from cancel culture and being canceled by just saying, anytime I've felt like a weird feeling in my chest about posting something on social media, I just said, bitch, you got to post that. You got to post it, right? And that's especially, coming from the perspective of a comedian. You cannot live in fear. You can't live life like a little bitch, gender neutral. Everybody writes their statements like they're crossing the Delaware. They write them like they're doing their own drafts of the Federalist Papers, Lovett said. It's enough. It's not working. Nobody is listening. The podcast host argued that while he believes they shouldn't look backwards, the party still needed to own where they went wrong. We have lost so much credibility with people, and we haven't gotten the ability to break through to people. And so, yes, we are frustrated and upset, Lovett said. I think we need to own the ways in which we are responsible for not being able to successfully communicate the threat Donald Trump poses. Favreau said Democrats need to speak normally to voters, and that assuming people will vote Democrat because of their identity should not be an assumption. Assuming people are going to vote for us based on their identity is a loser, and it has always been a loser, and it shouldn't be an assumption anymore. You have to make a case to people, and people without a college degree are now voting together more than whether they are Black, Latino, white, and we're starting to see that more. So Democrats have to speak that, and part of it is speaking that language, right, which is just normal people language. How do you talk to people at a bar, at a restaurant, in your own life, Favreau said. Earlier in the discussion, MSNBC co-host Micah Brzezinski, who has argued that former President Biden could have won and should not have dropped out, asked the podcast host about whether Democrats should really be focused on the narrative that Biden was too old. Veter said Democrats needed to be honest about the mistakes Democrats made. We all spent a lot of time, the Democratic Party, that is, trying to tell voters that their eyes weren't seeing what they saw, which was a man that was too old to run for re-election, Vitor said, noting it was a mistake. Brzezinski responded with, oh. I mean, obviously, this is from Fox News, so they're ending the article in that way on purpose. But I thought it was a good article nonetheless, and thank you so much for sharing that. Obviously, she shared it because she said, hey, like, this is something that you've been talking about. I'm not the only, person on the left who's talking about the fact that Democrats need to be more accessible because, in a way, I was a victim of their elite nature myself, right? I was a victim of thinking like government and politics is something that is for people who went to Ivy League schools or who have master's degrees or who studied politics in school. When in reality, that was just a lie that we were sold by the left. I mean, the right certainly have a lot of people who I'm not even sure can read. But additionally, when you look at what America is supposed to be, what a democracy is supposed to be, it is supposed to be government that is run by the people. And so when I really sat down and thought about it, I said, I think the only thing that you really need to run for government is to love the place that you want to govern, to understand the place that you want to govern, to have lived in the place that you want to govern, and to want better for the place that you want to govern. And I think that's it, right? So
thanks, bitch. Have a great day.
I appreciate you all. Thank you so much. This episode was kind of wacky and went everywhere, but it's always so fun to do this show live. Again, if you have a story you want to share with me, a comment, a question, a concern, whatever it is, you can send it to me to withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much to everyone who clicked subscribe on the YouTube. I said it on the pre-show. We're so close to hitting 8,000 subscribers, and between the pre-show and now, we have hit 8,000 subscribers. That's really, really cool. This is definitely like a grassroots news show, so I appreciate you coming on this little journey with me. It's been fun, and it's only going to get more fun and more exciting. If you want to follow me on Instagram, it's Philanthropy Gal. All social media, I'm on Threads, I'm on X. Mike is at Them Harrington, and Without a Country podcast is also on Instagram. I think that's it for now. Again, just stay calm, but stay active, right? Okay? Especially those of you who are not in imminent danger of like being deported or getting your rights taken away, right? We're the people who need to step up right now. That's our responsibility and our civic duty. Yes, Mike?
Can I get a couple plugs in?
Yeah, go ahead.
If you are anywhere near Perryville, Maryland, this Saturday, February 1st, there's a great show at Fifth Company Brewing. Sean Donnelly is the headliner. Ryan Foster, Drew Montana, also on the show. And if you're in New York, next Friday, the big one, Armored Combat, the Armored League. I am hosting. It's $25 tickets for just the most fun Armored Melee you could possibly watch.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much for joining us on Without a Country. We'll talk to you next week. Be kind to each other. Bye. Oh, that's what Ellen says, isn't it? Don't say that.